Hello everyone and welcome! The time has finally come. At last we shall cover the story of the 3 demonic characters all of you wanted to hear about so much. Originally I avoided them because their stories are quite short on their own. But today is a special day that gives us the opportunity to combine these short stories into one bigger creepy bundle. So without further ado, let's have a look at the creatures that lurk in the dark. Whatever you do, don't tell him you missed the punchline. Most would say that death isn't funny. It isn't unless you're Shaco. Then it's hysterical. He is Valorant's first fully functioning homicidal comic. He jests until someone dies. And then he laughs. The figure that has come to be known as the Demon Jester is an enigma. No one fully agrees from whence he came, and Shaco never offers any details on his own. A popular belief is that Shaco is not of Runeterra, that he is a thing from a dark and twisted world. Still, others believe that he is the demonic manifestation of humanity's dark urges, and therefore cannot be reasoned with. The most plausible belief is that Shaco is an assassin for hire, left to his own lunatic devices until his services are needed. Shaco certainly has proven himself to be a cunning individual, evading authorities at every turn who might seek him for questioning for some horrendous law-breaking atrocity. While such scuttlebutt might reassure the native inhabitants of Valorant, it seems unimaginable that such a malevolent figure is allowed to remain at large. Whatever the truth of his history might be, Shaco is a terrifying elusive figure most often seen where madness can openly reign. Quite recently we learned about the demons of Runeterra and how they work. Demons such as Tahm Kench or Evelyn. These creatures from the spirit realm manifest on certain emotions. It can be lust for Evelyn or gluttony for Tahm Kench. They simply savor it. Shaco certainly fits the description of a demon. But the question is, which does he savor the most? The chaos of madness or the dread of fear? Before Nocturne, people believed that dreams were figments of their imagination, meaningless images that flashed through the mind when one slept. This belief was put to the test when a rash of sleep-related incidents started afflicting many throughout Runeterra. Some would wake up screaming, terrified and beyond consolation. Some could not fall asleep, slowly going mad as the nights ticked by. Some simply never woke up. Physicians were baffled until a nightmare-stricken man cried out a haunting name from his unconscious state, then stopped breathing. Magical energy arced from the man and Nocturne appeared. Nocturne did not take his introduction to the world kindly. He slaughtered everything he could find before mages were able to intervene and temporarily confine him. After a period of intense study, the mages divined that Nocturne haunted those in their sleep, attacking his victims where they were most powerless. This seemed to be his only purpose. The families of the victims demanded justice, but Nocturne's jailers were concerned that death might only return the creature to the place from which it came, making him even more powerful. When a wary mage guarding him finally succumbed to sleep, Nocturne vanished into thin air. Scholars have no idea whether he truly came from the plane of dreams, or whether there are any more like him. Perhaps the most disturbing theory is that Nocturne is a person's nightmare come to life. If this is true, they wonder, who is the dreamer? Darkness. Although it was never confirmed to be him, all the hints are extremely convincing. I highly recommend looking into the story called For Demacia if you're interested in this creature. And now to our final guest. Nyrem and his fellow brigades readied their horses beneath the noonday sun. He fastened the buckle on the last satchel on his horse. Each was filled with an assortment of ornately carved daggers, snow fox furs, and cured meat. The stolen wares weighed his horse's saddle down so significantly he decided to walk her back to the camp. Minesh slowed his horse to walk by Nyrem's side. "Why aren't you riding?" he asked. "A man who is kind to his horse receives kindness in return," answered Nyrem. "Maybe she'll reward you with a fine trade at market." said Minesh. "She's too sway back to ride anyway." "Not at all. This old girl's got many a mile left in her," said Nyrem. Minesh rode past, shaking his head. By the time the men reached the barren field before their cave hideout, the setting sun was casting a rosy glow over the horizon. A hollow whistling wind blew through rotted stalks and choking weeds. Moldy bales of hay were strewn about like corpses on a battlefield. Watching over this abandoned land was a crude scarecrow of cloth and straw, balanced on two legs of thin willow. Its tethered rags fluttered in the wind, and a rusted scythe hung limp from one arm. The brigands passed through the field and into the ragged thicket at its edge, where they approached the mouth of a cavern with stalactites protruding like bared teeth. After hobbling his mare with the other horses near the entrance, Nyrem joined the bandits who were kindling a fire beneath its lofty stone ceiling. Rymel, a man with a scar bisecting his face, nodded to him. Nyrem reached into his pocket to examine his most prized treasure, a shining red amulet hanging from a delicate chain. Nyrem recalled the moment he saw the necklace around the noblewoman's neck, framed by lavishly embroidered curtains in the window of her carriage. He and Rymel had halted the travelers under pretense of warning them about an approaching pack of raiders, when in fact their men were already lying in wait. It had only taken the guards a moment to spot the trap, but it was enough. Nyrem had silenced the first with a slash to the throat, while Rymel gutted the second. Their compatriots slew the others in a hail of arrows. Nyrem entered the carriage, demanding the necklace, but the woman held it tight to her breast. The stubborn wretch had slashed at him with a concealed knife before he plunged his own dagger into her neck and ripped the necklace from her grasp. Nyrem held it now as tightly as he had then, wiping away a spot of blood from the amulet until it reflected the rising moonlight. He replaced it in his pocket as a whinnying cry drew his attention to the horses near the entrance. "Rat in their meal again?" Nyrem asked. "They're jumping at shadows. Some brave horses, eh?" said Rymel. "Not shadows," said Minesh. "It was a ferocious bird, the great, fearsome Grow." The men guffawed. Sure enough, a black-winged bird flew over the brigands in the cave, but as its cries echoed, a slow dread crept into Nyrem's stomach. He watched the bird as it circled overhead. It wasn't searching for a place to roost. Silence fell upon the cave. Ear-splitting shrieks broke the quiet as hundreds of crows erupted into the cave in a cawing hurricane of snapping beaks and tearing claws. The men screamed as the birds pecked and clawed at open skin. Ebon talons tore into Nyrem's shoulder, drawing blood before he smashed the bird away. Nyrem dropped to the ground, crawling on all fours to the mouth of the cavern. Outside, the crows shrouded the cloudless sky and smothered the huntress moon. The cave amplified each sound tenfold, creating a cacophony of shrill shrieks and inhuman screams. He looked up to see Rymel staggering forward with blood pouring from the ruined craters of his eyes. Nyrem scrambled through the rough bush outside the cave. He would not die to a flock of birds. Just beyond the thicket, a maelstrom of crows flew around a figure at the edge of the field. The crude scarecrow stood with its arms spread wide, embracing the violent chaos of the storm. Its mouth was a ripped and jagged smile. All around it was mayhem. Faces were torn open to reveal webs of tendons and teeth, as crows ravaged throats. The scarecrow turned abruptly and stared straight at Nyrem. Its eyes burned with wild green witchfire. Terrified, Nyrem scrambled to his feet, running through the thicket and into the bare field in a mad sprint. The creature followed, lopping after him on its tall wooden legs with unnatural speed. The stench of rotten hay caught in Nyrem's throat as he fled. Nyrem glanced back and was horrified to see the scarecrow catching up. It sliced Nyrem's legs out from under him before he reached the first hay bale. Blind with fear, Nyrem screamed as he fell in a tangle of limbs, heart pounding in his throat. He tried to stand up, but his ruined legs collapsed beneath him. He scrambled away on his hands and knees, desperate to escape the nightmarish creature behind him. but the Scarecrow stepped on his back, pinning him to the ground. The monster reached down to pull Nyrem's head back to slice his neck, as if butchering a hog for a feast. Cold terror overwhelmed Nyrem as the Scarecrow loomed over him, bending so their faces were inches apart. Bile filled his mouth, and he gagged on the rank stench of a corrupt soul. "You crossed my field," said the Scarecrow, its voice muffled as if it spoke through a mouthful of damp grave soil. "And all that grows here is mine." The murder of crows engulfed Nyrem, talons bared and beaks wide. And that was the story of 3 old-school demons. Keep them in mind every time new information about demons pops up. As we look back, we may notice how all this fits in the end. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe for more stories. You can also follow us on any of our social media if you'd like to chat. So thank you all for being here and for listening to these tales. And as always, thank you, and hopefully you'll come again.